Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. I'm here with my buddy Jance from Jance Sports. What's good, brother? How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right, man. Just, like I said, blessed to be here for another day, man. I'm glad to be back on the channel. I haven't been here in a minute. Probably
I
as
know.
yeah, camera it'll fix itself up. I'm sorry about it, but yeah, man. Otherwise, man, I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back on here.
It's been too long, and I want to, have a more regular check-in and cadence with you this season, beyond just our two teams. I mean, the last time you were on was when we were obviously had our home and home series before we entered the SEC. I don't think I've had you on the channel since we joined the SEC. So I kind of labeled this as a little SEC check in. We're going to talk about your football team, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Of course, I'm very interested in what you guys have done this offseason. We're going to talk about coach quarterback combos in the SEC, who should be at that top tier, if it's Sark and Arch or others. And just excited to jump in with any other thoughts you have as we live in the chat, and get into y'all's schedule as well. I think your schedule is very, very intriguing. Before we get to the conversation, hey, Texas boy starting off with a super chat. What is going on? Hey, God bless you, my boy. God bless you. But before we get to there, I want to say, hey, guys, hit the like button. That's how we take attendance when you come into the chat. Really appreciate it. We're trying to help grow the platform. Our goal is to get to 15,000 subscribers by Texas Ohio State August 30th. It's free to show love, so throw your boy a sub. Also, while you're here, my boy Jance, throw him a sub. Jance Sports. He is a fanatic just like me, just different teams, but same type of analysis. Very, very, down to earth and a good brother to talk to, and somebody I'm excited to chop it up with today. Texas boy, again, thank you for your super chat. We got the usual suspects in here. FT in here, my man Texas Homer, my man Cameron Parker. It's gonna be a fun night tonight talking ball with you, Jance. So let me kind of set the tone here, man. You guys first season under Kalen DeBoer, there were highs, there were lows. Especially with Jalen Milroe getting acclimated, new offense, from the GOAT Nick Saban. We know what it is. First season that you guys had where you didn't reach 10 wins since 2007, finishing 9-4. You guys made, to me, one of the biggest acquisitions of the offseason was getting Ryan Grubb back connected with Kalen DeBoer. We know what Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer did with Washington. Now he's no longer with the Seattle Seahawks. He is at Bama. And Ty Simpson, from all accounts, taking over as a starting quarterback at Bama. Just where's your mind at, bro? Coming off 9-4, but it sounds like there's high expectations for year two under Coach DeBoer. And looking at your roster, rightfully so. Where do you stand on that, Jance?
Oh, we better make the playoffs. We better make the playoffs. That's the almost. Wait, listen. If we don't make the playoffs this year, it's gonna be some problems because listen, he's got his coach back. Ryan Grubb is back. Um, like we got all the pieces needed defensively. We have some of the most we have the most starters defensively right now in the SEC, not just in the SEC but in the country. You have a lot of experience on your defensive line. You have phenomenal rotation, phenomenal depth there. Offensive line wise is again that's the only area that I'm concerned with. But this is where you bring in Ryan Grubb. You bring him in there. You bring in a guy that specializes in terms of utilizing the personnel and depth at the at that sort of positions, guard, center, tackle. You want to try to figure that situation out. And really, the only problem is tackle. Like right tackle is once again an issue, which again, it was a very similar issue with Washington where they couldn't figure out who their right tackle was, and they were able to figure that out by getting Rosengard through the season. We all know how that turned out to be. So I mean, you got everything you need. You got you got the explosive playmakers. You have I think the running depth. You have everything you need. Now you just got to go out there and at least make it to the playoffs. If we can't make it to a 12-team playoff, then there's going to be some questions about DeBoer and whether or not he can still be the coach of this program.
Ty Simpson taking over for Jalen Milroe. Ty Simpson's been in the program multiple years now. We know there's a much ballyhooed recruit that you guys got in there in Keelan Russell, who we've all followed and watched his career at Duncanville. But This right now seems to be kind of the perfect scenario for Ty to take over and really handle the reins. How do you feel about him as your starting quarterback?
Yeah, he's going to be the starting quarterback. I think he's going to be the starting quarterback. Big reason why is because Kalen DeBoer trusts people that has a lot of veteranship, right? You want guys that are leaders in the locker room. You want guys that, for the most part, guys that can step in there from day one, knows the system or has some familiarity with it, and a guy that can go through that smooth sailing process. Now, Russell obviously has more upside. He's way more precise, especially with his release. But overall wise, I believe that Ty Simpson is the guy. I think Ty Simpson overall is going to be the guy there. You love those mental intangibles that he brings to the table, and again, he offers a little bit more, right? He offers more mobility. He offers a little bit more mobility, so you're not going to lose too much of a fact. Well, there's a drop off between him and Jalen Miro, but um, Ty Simpson for the most part, I think he's the guy. I think he's definitely going to be the guy. And honestly, you don't really need him to do too much within this offense. I think that this is an offense for the most part. It should go a lot more smooth sailing. Um, for the most part, I mean, besides Bryce Young, I mean, Ty Simpson actually would be the guy that actually has the most recurring experience within an offense in year two, because not even Jalen Murrow was able to go through it because we kept changing coordinator to coordinator to coordinator, having
Right.
terrorist. So hopefully now by bringing in Ryan Grubb in here, someone that we all know Kalen DeBoer is best friends with, extremely familiar with, almost has 2 decades of coaching experience with, that can and that can help out a quarterback in Ty Simpson, who actually fits the mold and the archetype of what quarterback is supposed to be successful, which is a lot of play action, RPO based concepts, which Ty Simpson absolutely thrives in.
He's a good athlete too. He's no slouch. I understand Milrow is up there with a different tier of athlete. Even in the NFL, Milrow will stand out athletically at the quarterback position. But Ty Simpson, he had a 72-yard touchdown run against Chattanooga. Like the guy's not a scrub. He can move. He's a guy that also you think about throwing on the run, a lot of some of the quarterback movement aspect. I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes from him. And think about your schedule early. So this is where I'm looking at Bama. You guys have not one but two Power Four schools that you're playing in September. Well, actually, one in August because you go to Florida State the first game, correct? You go to Doak Walker or Doak Campbell Stadium,
Yep.
and then
Wisconsin comes to us. Yep.
Wisconsin goes to you in 2 weeks after that. So having a veteran guy in there against those type of teams before you get into SEC play, I think will be very, very key. But I also think that you're leaning on your defense for those games for sure. You're opening the season. You're probably going to play Sheehan, Kyler Murray there, who found his way to Florida State. I think they're out of the Hawaiian starting quarterback business, so they're turning over to the old BC quarterback. So we'll see what Mike Norvell, what that whole situation looks like. But I think you guys will smother them defensively. I guess my question for you guys, I think your defense is going to be amazing this year. I really, really do. I look at the big names, Sab, Overton, Lawson. Though that's just rattling off the top of my head. Some of the top end talent that you have on top of the depth that's currently there. My question is, when I think of Bama, I think of defense and I think of your running game. Where the hell was the running game last year? Because I'm looking at Jam Miller, Richard Young. These guys were big recruits. These guys weren't scrubs. Will we see the return of the Bama running game in 2025? Oh, you're muted, gents.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, listen. I think we'll have improvement. We're not gonna get there to that level. Big reason why is because of the offensive line, and I think year two within this blocking scheme, because we went from like more of a power based scheme to transitioning to a zone based scheme. Problem is that when you have 350-pound dudes that specialize in gap, they're not. I mean, these are guys. I mean, they're not really good when it comes to zone. So when we try to run like a lot of outside zone, based concepts, the yards per carry was terrible. Like we were one of the worst running groups in the nation in terms of yards per carry, which is insane to even think about. Um, But it's just I think we'll have some improvement there because I think that with an offensive line like Kalen DeBoer, it prioritizes speed, agility, and so when you have that speed and agility, typically you're going to have offensive linemen that is gonna they're not as big, right? So like I think perfect example. Caden Proctor. Caden Proctor is not. No,
Right.
Caden Proctor is a big dude. He's 360 pounds. But what does he struggle with? He struggles with lateral agility, lateral quickness. This is when he goes. This is when he went up against a that first matchup against Texas, and all of a sudden, he's going against their edge rushers, which are tall, slim, slender, and guys that can bend. He struggles with them. Landon Jackson, which by the way, my Buffalo Bills actually drafted him because of that game. That was confirmed. 4 sacks in that game. Why? Because Landon Jackson can bend at 6'6", 6'7", and was pretty much was just it was a technical chess master like performance against him. So Caden Proctor, man, like that's not even though Caden Proctor is projected as like a top 5 pick, I don't he may be one of the first names if he does decide to clear for the draft that is projected to go top 5 that may slide even further because his weaknesses are don't like his weaknesses it pretty much what I'm trying to say is like our strength of what this offensive line can do it doesn't fit what he can do extremely well.
I see what you're saying.
So yeah, it can't. Like I don't think he's catered toward this offensive line. So we want a lot more slimmer, but obviously you look at a guy like a center. You look at our starting center, who has a lot of veteran experience. Went up against Texas in the playoff game, did a very very good job. Like that's what you want. You want 6'2", 270, 80-pound guys. You want guys that can pull, guys that can track. You want guys for the most part that know how to move around and especially more in a zone scheme, it's just not going to really work out with their running game. Not to mention, too, Jam Miller even though he's more of a zone runner, he's more of a one-cut, straight line sort of guy. He's not a guy that knows how to set up his blocks. That knows how to set up his blocks. He
Right.
sees the gap and he's gone. And unfortunately, Jam Miller just didn't have too many opportunities. And honestly, I think our running game, quite frankly, just honestly couldn't really fit. It just the continuity there was just terrible. And so Richard Young is a lot of talent. I think Richard Young is one of those backs that actually I think does prioritize with fitting the system because I think he is a guy that is a patient back, but he's also a very, very tough back, especially yards after contact bigger. I actually want him to be the starter. Jam Miller is a player that it's just that's not starting quality. I think that's more rotational depth. But again, we are a program that lies in loyalty, and so Jam Miller's probably going to be the starter, and we're going to have to go to the situation where the better running backs, like we did last time with Justice Haynes sitting on the bench, where Jam Miller was the one that was getting a lot of the opportunities. It's probably going to happen again this year. So I mean, if we want to win a national championship or at least get to the playoffs, you got to have that running game. And I just unfortunately for us, even though I think that pass pro will be a lot better, I'm not too sure about the running game, and I think that can honestly cost us.
I think it cost you last year. And to this point here, Brock RTR, he's talking about Milrow was kind of the catalyst there in the run game, but kind of took a lot of responsibility from the backs and y'all being, I think out of necessity almost being so quarterback run oriented, getting those guys in a rhythm too. I mean, we talked about this with our Texas running backs, and what even the guys we have coming back, getting them into a rhythm. It's kind of like a boxing match. You got to get lathered up. It's hard to just jump in there and understand, the flow of the game unless you have a great offensive line and there's just countless opportunities. You want to try to establish that rhythm with your offensive line and it takes carries, it takes opportunities, but it also takes trust from the coaching staff that you'll have proper ball security and things of that sort. I know when I look at a guy like Miller, at times ball security it seemed to me, now maybe I'm out of line here, but it seemed a little shaky. When I think of the
Oh,
South
you're right.
Florida
No,
game.
you can say it. His ball security sucked. It was terrible. You can say it. We can be honest here.
So y'all got to protect the rock if y'all want more opportunities, right? Same thing with our guys. Guys, we have talented guys like Jared Gibson, and some other young runners that were even Jaden Blue, who's now at the Cowboys, that were held back because of ball security issues. So that is going to be a big, big key getting on the field. When you look at your schedule, how are you navigating this to get to where you want to go, right? Because as I pull this up, like we said, you start with Florida State at Doak Campbell, August 30th. You play Monroe after that, your first tune-up game of the season. And then the very next week, you have Wisconsin coming in before you have a bye week. And then y'all kick off SEC play with Georgia. So just that's just September. That's August 30th through September. What say you when it comes to navigating the schedule, Chance?
I actually believe like this is the perfect start for us. I said it. I don't fear Georgia. I think we'll crush Georgia in that game. I think Georgia's gotten a lot weaker. I don't trust.
Crush Georgia. That's
I think we'll
crazy.
crush. I think we'll crush Georgia. I think Mike Boat. And again, Georgia fans, you can be in the comments. You can say whatever you want to say. The fact of the matter is, you have not beaten us in a regular season game since Ryan Williams was literally in diapers. So we can stop with all that mess. But no, I don't trust Mike Bobo as an offensive coordinator, and not to mention too, I don't trust Gunnar Stockton. Their offensive line, I think, is going to be solid. They did lose some key additional pieces, but they'll be solid defensively. They're not as strong in the trenches compared to what they were compared to what they were in 21 and 22. They're not as strong. They haven't really recovered. Yes, they got the talent. I got to see it to actually believe it, but that was the one aspect about them that I just didn't fear. I like their secondary. I love the athleticism. I didn't trust their front seven at all. Now they got some dogs like CJ Allen. I love CJ Allen a lot.
Mhm.
I think CJ Allen could be a first round pick. I like their secondary too. With KJ Bolden in there, and we'll see. Obviously,
KJ's going to take a next step this year.
yeah,
He'll
yeah,
be
KJ,
all
like,
conference
yep. I,
contender.
I I completely agree. Like they got some really good players in that secondary. Um, No, I'm not. You know what? I'll say this: like, they're both of their corners are solid. They both will come up. They're extremely athletic. I gotta see more. I gotta see more. That's just all I'm gonna say about Georgia. But no, it's a match. It's a matchup nightmare, I think, for Georgia right now. So I think we'll take care of business there. Where I think things get tricky is going to be exactly what happened last year. It's Tennessee, and I think it's Tennessee. It is, and it's a big reason why is because is their defense. Yes, they do lose some pieces, but like Tennessee had a very deep rotation on the defensive line last
They
year.
did.
They had
Mhm.
a very deep rotation, and so they return a lot of that back. Yes, they lose James Pierce. Yes, you lose Orman Norman Lott, but they still have a very, very deep rotation. I got to see what Jermon McCoy does. I know he torn his ACL a little bit later in the season. He's one of the better cornerbacks in the country, so I'm curious to see what happens with him. But their offense it'll be interesting to see what happens. But we all know what Tennessee's offense loves to do, guys. They simply like to split, like they simply like to wide that weird spread offense where they split you all the way to the hashes, and they run nothing but just vertical concepts all day long. Try to get you in man coverage, and they'll try to take advantage and kill you with it. Like we all know what they like to do. Nico's gone, so that honestly, I don't know if that's a pro or that's a con because Nico's. I mean, he couldn't throw a deep ball. Like I couldn't understand. He just couldn't hit a deep pass. But short intermediate, he was excellent. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it. But Tennessee is going to be a very, very tough team. That's one of those games that I'm a little worried about. And then LSU. Listen, we smacked LSU last year, but listen, LSU they pretty much revamped that entire team.
They
With
should be a lot better this year.
Yeah, they should be a
Should
lot
be.
better. You got Anderson, you got both Andersons actually, Aaron, and
Mhm.
you got Nick Anderson to kind of hold it down there. The offensive line, we'll see what happens with that. They lose a couple of key pieces on that offensive line, but I still think but I still
I
think
think Caden Durham is going to be a rock star in year
yeah,
two.
I believe it.
I really do.
I like what I saw from Caleb. I like what I saw from Caleb Durham. That defense should be better. It cannot be any worse than what it was last year.
It
Um,
won't be Baker. I trust Coach Baker.
yeah, on that
They
defensive
paying
line.
$2 million for a defensive coordinator. He gonna flip that thing around.
Yeah,
I'm not.
you can't. Like you got Delane from Virginia Tech, who's one of the best cornerbacks. That's a projected first round pick. Finally back there in that secondary. The linebacking. Patrick Payton is a underrated hidden gem for that team. I mean, it's just like you finally kind of you got him. You got Harold Perkins. You got Weeks coming back from that ACL injury. Their defense should be a lot better. They got a lot of key additional pieces there. So yeah, I would say later on in the season them, and then of course Auburn. Last game of the season, Auburn's got a lot of talent. It is what it is. You play in
Auburn
Auburn,
does have a lot of talent.
it's voodoo land, man. Like you like we play there, man. It's like I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's just it's what some they sprinkles whatever. I don't know what they do. They keep a doll of us and put them in the freezer, and I don't know. But we always tend to struggle there and this at this time of the season. So I would say once again the later stretch of the season is something that could potentially cost us. We do play Oklahoma again, which Oklahoma spanked the absolute dog crap out of us. Why? Because we didn't have a passing game and we relied solely on Jalen Miro to run the football because we couldn't use our running backs. But that's just it is what it is. So well, it's just yeah, the second half of the season is going to be the biggest test for us. But honestly, yeah, I think the first half of the season is honestly where we should definitely find our stride. We could definitely find our stride. Like you said, I think Florida State, Wisconsin are two teams I think just need more time, especially Wisconsin. I don't. Wisconsin's lost. They lost too many big impactful players, too many big impactful coaches over the years that they simply just can't recover from. They don't do that well in the transfer portal. Florida State could do something because I like some of the additions that they added. I just don't think that they're going to be ready. I just don't think they're going to be ready for us. And yeah, like I said about Georgia, I think we'll crush them.
So we actually don't have the only common opponents we have are Georgia, Vanderbilt, and well, we lost Chance for a second, so he'll be back. So we got Georgia, Vanderbilt, and OU are the common opponents. It's interesting to hear his thoughts on Georgia as we get Jance back on here, because Gunnar Stockton to me did play well in the Notre Dame game. They did not lose the Notre Dame game because of Gunnar Stockton. I'm gonna respect what he's gonna bring to the table. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Mike Bobo fan compared to what they had before in Todd Monken, but Gunnar Stockton stepping into that role with what I've already said with Arch, we have proof of concept as to what he can be and what he can do. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you should probably feel the same way about Gunnar Stockton, considering where he was asked to play and the situations he was asked to play in last year. He should only get better. He's going to have some learning, in strides and whatnot. But Georgia has an interesting stretch to start the season because they really have, two tune-up games in Marshall and Austin P the first 2 weeks of the season, and then they go to Tennessee in week 3. Because remember, one of their non-conference games is always Georgia Tech at the end of the year. So their SEC slate starts a little earlier than everybody else. They go to Tennessee, then they have a bye week, and then it's Bama. So that's going to be a really interesting stretch of football there for them, in my opinion. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I think it's going to be really, really, really interesting how that breaks down. Looks like we have Jance back, so let me get him over here. What's up, brother? Can you hear us? I can hear you.
Yep, I got it.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So, I was just talking about Georgia and kind of their quarterback situation, because a lot of these, and this is where I want to kind of open up the conversation to just, you're brutally honest and you talk about these things. I mean, you think about some of these coach quarterback combinations, right? And who has stability or who's going to be good. I think a lot of us are banking on BK and Nuss to cook at LSU. Obviously at Texas, we're banking on Sark and Manning to cook. At OU, it's going to be Arbuckle and Mateer to cook. I mean, you go on down to South Carolina, right? Shane Beamer and Lenore Sellers got to go to the next level, right? So how do you look at the Texas situation this offseason, where we finished, obviously being in the SEC championship, and then kind of some of the other coach quarterback combinations that really have your attention?
Well, first of all, like Texas, I didn't see any, big time players lose, which is always a W. That's always a win for the program. In terms of losing them to the transfer portal. Listen, I think Texas once again will go to the SC championship game. This is my prediction. Last time I was on here, I told y'all that Texas in 23 was going to be a problem. I told a lot of y'all. I didn't
You
believe it.
did.
Uh, Texas will be back in the SC championship. I think that this is the weakest that the SC has ever been this year. It's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Now, if that's due to the transfer portal, if that's due to whatever certain situations, again, it all could be related. But Texas, they're capitalizing off of every like as teams are getting weaker at this new period, Texas is getting stronger. Texas is, of course, we all know what their NIL situation's like. They're dominant in that particular aspect. They're retaining players from the state, which is crucial because you watch what USC's do. I mean, obviously Lincoln Riley is,
No, good point. Yeah, because
first
y'all
time.
got Domani Jackson now over like
Yeah, him and Xavier Brown. Like we keep stealing modern day players from there. I mean, now we've made it a personal pipeline. But yeah, like retaining the state and the top players there, that's extremely crucial. And so listen, I like Texas. I think Texas. DeAndre Moore, I got an eye out for because I think. Listen, I'm just gonna say right here, I'm gonna call it. He's a Buffalo Bill. I don't want anyone else taking him. I like DeAndre Moore a lot, especially how he operates in the slot, especially how you can use him as a vertical threat. That's a 4.3 runner, man. If not a little faster than that. But I like him a lot. Obviously, we all know what Ryan Wingo can do. Like they got dogs. They got a lot of dogs at the receiver position. Running game. Wisner is my favorite. I love Wisner. A lot. I understand that obviously because I forgot what's his face. He got hurt that he stepped in.
Baxter. Yeah.
Baxter got hurt that he stepped into the play, but his yards after contact is ruthless. He is a back that does not go down after first contact. He's a really good receiving back. And so I like Texas. I think will be fine. If anything, I think getting Arch Manning to be the starting quarterback, it offers a lot more freedom because now you have a quarterback that can move around. You have a quarterback that's mobile, a guy that can improvise and make certain plays. Something that I just don't think that Quinn Ewers could do it. I don't think he can do it as freely compared to an Arch Manning, someone that is kind of that new prototypical pocket, that pro style pocket passing sort of quarterback, that new evolution of that just offers way more mobility and offer way more dangerous ground to a point where you cannot. I don't think Arch Manning is a quarterback that you simply cannot rush straight up. You got to have some sort of linebacker that can spy. Your edge rushers got to play a little bit smart contain, which can cause problems because when you have linebackers that are spying, what happens? That's how you can exploit in zone. And
Mhm.
Texas is not a team that you do not want to straight up. You don't want to play man against the receivers. They have too much speed along the boundary in the slot that they can absolutely kill you. You got to play. You got to play some sort of zone, some sort of again, I know a lot of teams are playing a lot of two high looks, but Texas is one of those teams where you got to force Arch Manning to make certain mistakes, and so listen, like having that mobility and having someone that can just break overall boundaries of the defense, boundaries of a defense is crucial, and I think that could potentially elevate Texas to a position where simply Quinn Ewers simply can't. Yes, Quinn had arguably may have a stronger arm, but I think
I
that
will
Quinn,
say this though, Jance, just
yeah,
to jump in here while you're on that point. I was watching. So I'm a big. I like watching QB schools content for the most part, and he's done some film breakdowns on Arch, his two starts, the start he had against Louisiana Monroe, as well as the start he had against Mississippi State. I was watching the Mississippi State film last night, and it's interesting because they were opening up in a lot of that too high, even at times a little three high look,
yeah,
like an inverted three high that they were doing. But
mhm,
it was interesting because the first passing play we ran like deep curls, and it was more aggressive because on Sunday service we had a conversation, those who were here, about Sark's first plays of the game are normally like bubble screens. He's normally like rhythm completions, things like that. And Arch drills, I think it was a deep curl to Matthew Golden, that was 15, 20 yards, where he throws the ball on a rope. And I think with Quinn, as good as Quinn was, one of his gifts was layering throws, some of that soft touch, which really helped the receivers, especially on the outside, deep outs, deep comebacks, things of that sort, or throwing it over a linebacker but in front of a safety. Quinn was always very good at laying throws. But in terms of just hitting a target dead center, and I need to put some velocity on that. I need a fastball we're going to see that with Arch. We weren't getting that with Quinn. I mean, there
Yeah,
were times where it's like, hey, I need you to bring the ball down and put some heat on that thing, right? There was another one where we ran almost kind of like a double post concept. Homer knows what I'm talking about. Double post concept where he hits Isaiah Bond on the move, in between like this like gap area, but he just throws an anticipatory ball, but he throws it on a rope precisely on a
mhm,
dime. And I think that's what an element of our offense we had been missing with Quinn that I do think we will get with Arch. But he's also going to have to learn and be even better with protections. I think to your point about how defensive ends play him, how edges play him, there's probably going to be a lot more stunts. There's probably going to be one guy drops off and maybe a nickel comes, right? Do we know how to communicate with our younger offensive line to pick those things up? Those were struggles that Arch had, especially in the Monroe game, was just understanding what the front was or things of that sort. I think he learns and he's coachable and he'll probably pick that stuff up real quick. But we are starting with Ohio State, right? So you're going to get tested going against, hey, regardless of how you people feel about Matt Patricia, that is who we're dealing with the very first game,
yeah.
right? So
I'm
it
excited
will be
about
interesting.
Sony Styles, by the way, too. Sony Styles and how Sony Styles he might. I got to. So like because I had a fan tell me that they're gonna use Sony Styles. If you don't know who Sony, yeah, for those who
Sonny
don't know,
Styles, yeah.
he's a beast. He's an athletic freak. That could be that next Dante Hightower where they have him play edge. Like that's some edge a little bit, but he's more of an off ball specialist that has literally Isaiah Simmons qualities. I'm excited to see what he does, but Ohio State, they lost their entire defensive line. So that would be interesting to see what kind of happens with that. Because when you literally lose an entire front four, obviously the communication there in terms of stunts and knowing how to operate, and obviously linebackers trying to, obviously trying to communicate with them and learning it for them out of the scrape. That will be interesting to see. So it's two, like, obviously you got Texas, you got a young offensive line there versus another young. That will be an ultimate chess match to see what kind of happens with Sark going against Matt Patricia.
Yeah, no, there's two chess matches in that game that are fascinating. Sark versus Matt Patricia, and then PK versus Brian Hartline. Wink, wink, wink. Ryan Day, right? Because I find it very hard to believe that they're just going to go full tilt, let Brian Hartline call all the plays for the very first time in his life in that game. I feel like Ryan Day is going to be interjected. I'll believe it when I see it. They claim that Brian Hartline is going to be their primary play caller. I'll believe it when I see it. I feel like Ryan Day is going to have some sort of impact there. So I'm more so labeling it PK versus Brian Hartline slash Ryan Day. But the Sark versus Matt Patricia matchup is very intriguing. Two former NFL guys going at each other, right? So always fun times there. Now, my, kind of looking across the scene, right? I mean, I've already kind of thrown out some of the names. BK, Nuss, right? Lagway being in year two with Billy Napier at Florida. I think they feel good that they're probably ascending. Their schedule's hella tough, and they're gonna have to navigate that again. But I think with what they have coming back, they probably feel really good. Jackson Arnold going to Auburn with Hugh Freeze, right? You guys will see him at the end of the year. Oklahoma is resorting to Arbuckle and Mateer. And I think what I'm going to do is on our Friday show, everybody, I think we're going to do some sort of stack ranking of just the quarterbacks that we will face. I think that'd be fun. Out of the 12 games we have, I'm going to kind of rate them from top to bottom of who we face. But, some of the more intriguing passers in this league this year, Gunner. How do you? Let me start with this. How do you feel about Gunner Stockton? Are you high on him, medium, or you feel like you're gonna tear him apart when you see him?
I think we're going to tear him apart. But I also will say this about Gunner Stockton. He could be the next Denton Bennett in terms of what he brings to the table for Georgia, man. He is a lot more mobile, way more mobile. He's short in stature, like little short in stature, a little slim. I think he's like, what, 5'11", 6 feet tall, around 185 pounds. So he's got that Stenton Bennett sort of built, that sort of ability that he has there. And he's tough, man. Like he's very, very tough, very, very resilient.
Very tough. We know
He
that
Yeah,
Very well,
very,
Texas
yeah.
fans.
So he's a different sort of style of quarterback compared to Carson Beck, who obviously I think Carson Beck with that I don't know what happened with Carson Beck. Just like everything dropped off from him, the anticipation, the ability to fit passes through tight windows, how confused he was against certain coverage sets. It was just like I don't know what happened compared to what he was in obviously in 23, but yeah, like I'm not that high on him in the first half of the season, but the second half of the season, as he starts to really gain a lot of chemistry with those receivers that they got, because they do got some dangerous explosive playmakers. They got some guys adding in Zachariah Branch, Dylan Bell's kind of that Elijah Badger. I'm not Elijah Badger, Percy Harvin sort of player where he pretty much does everything for them. Like they got weapons. They got weapons down there. So that could be a person that second half of the year he could very well be one of the more dangerous quarterbacks in the SEC.
A lot of the people in the chat here right astutely pointing out Georgia's propensity with dropping passes, leading the
Yeah.
nation in drop passes. So I think it was a combination of things. I mean, their running game was in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they ran the ball okay against us versus how they. I thought we'd have more success stopping their run with ETN and how banged up he was, but for the most part, they were inconsistent there. Then you factor in the drop passes. Then you factor in Carson Beck trying to do too much. I think he was actually trying to play to go to the league. And I think he got carried away and tried to really force some anticipatory stuff that he may not be capable of. And then I think it got mental for him, some of those picks. Because then he started throwing WTF picks. And it was weird at some point, like every week. So, it'll be interesting to see how they overhaul that with Bobo. But I think Bobo has a piece of it too. They've taken a step back schematically from Todd Monken. I'm sorry. I know Todd Monken he had Pickens and Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers. Like, they had an offense, okay, plus several different running backs. I get it. But schematically, it just seemed like, especially in big games, they were way more on point than they were last season. So we'll see how they revamp that, because they still won the SEC championship game last year. And then obviously what they did, in their loss to Notre Dame. As I go to the next quarterback, how do you feel about Diego Pavia
Oh
at Vanderbilt? That's who you
yeah,
faced after Georgia.
oh man, yeah, yeah, he brings nightmares. Yeah, obviously that option offense. Good God, man, that just was bad. It was definitely a bad time. Yeah, listen, Diego is going to offer he's going to offer mobility. He's a captain, leader, poised. Um, we all know what he's not going to be like a high end draft pick. We all know that's not going to happen. I don't. He might
No,
not even get drafted. There's probably a chance he's not even going to get drafted. But
he's
he just
just he's the classic college pain in
quarterback,
the ass quarterback. Yeah,
right? He's a
absolutely.
nuisance, man. Like you just you don't want to go against him. Vanderbilt's got some dangerous pieces too, man. Like bringing back Eli Stowers, they bring out some really good receivers on the outside that causes some problems. Like Vanderbilt's got weapons. And so yeah, like their offense is definitely now again. I think that our matchup against Vanderbilt, I just felt like overall wise it was a piss poor game plan. How what we were able to do against that sort of offense, and quite frankly, they simply copied what Tennessee did, and they just kind of added more wrinkles to it, and then boom, and then what happened? Oklahoma did the exact same situation that those two teams did, and we couldn't stop it. I do think we make an adjustment this year in terms of how we utilize some of our personnel, but yeah, Pavia is going to be a quarterback. I Vanderbilt, they're probably going to win again, 5, 6, maybe even 7 games, but they'll once again become a nuisance to somebody. Probably us, most likely.
So after that, you go and play Missouri, who will have a transfer in there by the name of Bo Pribula. For those who are not familiar with Bo, he was the backup at Penn State and was used a lot in packages and played a lot when Drew Aller went down. He was kind of a hero in the Wisconsin game last year, coming in the second half and pulling that out when it looked like Penn State was about to get upset. So Bo Pribula transferred to Missouri. It looks like that will be his job. And they also bring in Ahmad Hardy, who was a phenomenal running back last year in the G5. Now going to Missouri, one of the big pickups in the SEC overall. Um, how do you feel about that matchup there with Bo and Ahmad Hardy? I feel like y'all should be able to handle that. I mean, Coach
Yes,
Drinkowitz, yeah. I mean, what's your take there?
yeah, yeah, smash. To quote the great Khabib. But yeah, no, I just
Smash.
yeah, I think yeah, like I have some questions about their offensive line. They lost some key pieces. Losing Membu there. Definitely some questions about that. But Theo Weiss and losing both Theo Weiss and Evans and what's his name? What's the Luther Burton is
Hmm.
like who do I don't know who they have to replace it. I know they got some pieces from the portal. I just don't know if they have enough depth and if they have enough quality that can beat our secondary, which arguably will be our strength. I think our defensive line against the run game was one of our biggest strengths last year in certain occasions. I just think it's a bad matchup overall. I think Missouri is going to be Missouri is a team that right now is they're not gonna fall off the face of the earth, but it's this is gonna I think this is gonna be a down year for them. I think 7-8 games. I think exactly what they're gonna win. I think they need more. They got to add more depth, try to get some more quality for next season. But I think they take a step backwards. I think, and listen, the last couple seasons, they were on a high. They were on a high last couple seasons. I think they start to kind of fall off a little bit here this season.
So the following week, you guys come back home to play Tennessee. I honestly think y'all should go belt. I know it's a rivalry game,
Yeah.
and I know it's been a very emotional game the last few years. Um, I think this is a belt to ass situation here. I'm sorry. I mean, I just don't see how they'll. I don't see how you guys will allow them to just run the football like that again,
Mm-hmm.
especially with they're losing Dylan Sampson, Nico obviously not being there. I mean, I don't feel any type of way about Joey Aguilar. I mean, assuming he's the starter, what say you about Tennessee?
So the tricky part about going against Tennessee, obviously, is again when they split you out, like just all across, like all the way across the field, all the way to the hashes, and then all of a sudden, it leaves your linebackers kind of alone in an island a little bit, and it's one of the most frustrating offenses to play against, man. It's so frustrating to play against. You got to have a dominant one tech to beat that team. You got to have someone. You got to have a one tech that is on a terror against that team. If teams don't use a one tech and they primarily use threes, you're gonna lose. You're gonna get smashed. You got to have someone. You got to have a big name presence that can really control the line of scrimmage. Because this is what they capitalize off of. As soon as they can get 4 to 5 yards a chunk, that's when they kill you with the short to intermediate. Once you start to kind of come down and you start to stack that box a little bit, that's when they start to run those vertical routes and
Yep.
they stretch the field game, and then you lose. The only time they lose is if Nico can't hit. He just can't hit a pass. Can't hit a pass. And so hopefully, so we'll see what this new quarterback is going to look like. But yeah, I mean, listen, Tim Keenan. This game is going to be all on Tim Keenan. It's going to be all on our really going to be more on our rotation because if they're doing the exact same situation that they were doing last year and they're averaging 4 to 5 yards a carry, yes, we were able to stop it a lot. We only allowed Tennessee to score 3 points in the first half. I would say offensively was the biggest reason why we lost the game. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, typically against Tennessee and their defense is not they're not going to take a massive drop off. That defense is still going to be very very good. And so that could be another game that we could struggle a little bit. They have a really really good deep rotation on defensive line. I think their secondary will be solid. I got to see the status with McCoy because I know he tore his ACL in the late stretch. I don't know if he's going to be able to play in the early stretch, but he could be there in the second half, and he's a beast. I like him a lot, and so especially one of the best press man corners, definitely right now in the country. But yeah, so that could be another close. It's been close the last couple of years. It's not been like it wasn't like how it was 3 years ago. How it's been a shootout. It's been like very very close, low scoring games, and so you know I I hope we put belt to ass against them. I'd love to smoke a cigar against that team, but yeah, Tennessee that's a team that's a dangerous team. That's a dangerous team.
I
I
see where
hate
you're
Josh
going.
Heupel.
I see where you're going. What's up, Derek Weiser? How you doing today, sir? Good to see you. We actually talked about Trey a little bit earlier, but we just kind of walking through having a little SDC check in. So South Carolina, at South Carolina, Lenore Sellers getting a ton of buzz coming off of last year. We know what he did. Probably this one of the scariest teams
Yeah.
not to make the playoffs, just with how they started SEC play versus where they finished, and then obviously beating Clemson in that game as well. Where do you sit with South Carolina? Because I feel like they're a team that is getting a lot of love and a lot of hype, but can they play up to that hype?
Yeah, and I think South Carolina's. I think so, again, that's playing on the road at South Carolina's. That's a very nasty environment to play in. I think they're a little overrated. I think people are kind of overrating them a little bit too high right now. I think like they when you lose both when you both lose Tonka and then you lose to TJ Sanders, who played a massive amount of snaps for your defensive line. I gotta see your depth because like TJ Sanders played everywhere. He played at one tech, he played at three, he played at 4I, he played at five. Tonka was another three. You lose Kyle Kennard. That's a big loss. Yes, you got the freshman who's going to be coming back this year as a monster, understandably so, and I think he can definitely cause disruption. But Demetrius Knight was the captain of that defense, gone. You lose O'Donnell Fortune that secondary, gone. You lose Nick Imawari to the Seattle Seahawks. Very, very huge, impactful player in that defense. Gone. I like Jalen Kilgore. Jalen Kilgore, I like him a lot, especially because he offers a lot more versatility. He can play as more as a nickelback, can play as a boundary guy, or could play more as your free safety. I'm curious to see what their depth looks like, especially offensively, because I look at Sellers. Like Sellers made so many plays. Like South Carolina had a lot of broken plays.
A lot.
That offensive line was terrible, and the amount of plays that he was able to create and how he was able to generate by himself was insane. I still have questions about the receivers. Nick Harper, who's everyone's just hyping out about because of his college football 25 rating, but yeah, I mean, obviously he's an incredible athlete, like one of the most freak. He's been on Bruce Philbin's number one freaks list for since he was a
But
freshman.
we got to see it, bro. We
Got to
got to
see it.
see it. He's made splash plays here and there,
Yeah,
but
man.
yeah,
6'5", 250 pounds that can run a 4.2 potentially. Like I got to start seeing that on the field a little bit more. But no, South Carolina, I just think that the talent drop off from last year, I don't know if South Carolina is going to be able to replicate that because their schedule was tough. They had a pretty tough schedule last year. South Carolina is a team that if they would have made the playoffs, they could have made noise in those playoffs. They were really going on a hot streak. They almost beat us, even though we played one of our worst games against them. We made so many mental mistakes. I just have questions. Can Lenora Sellers, can he take it to the next level? Can he take it to the next level, or is he going to be the next Jalen Miro? Because Jalen Miro was getting a lot of hype at this point compared to what he did when he closed the show off the last 5-6 games of the season. Then all of a sudden we came to this year. Obviously, yes, we had a brand new offensive scheme, so that's we got to take that into consideration. But Jalen Miro, in terms of how he was as a quarterback, just he didn't take that step. If anything, there were areas where he actually went backwards. He actually regressed in certain areas compared to what we thought he could develop, just based off of the flashes we saw in 23. So I just Lenora Sellers could be a top 5 quarterback, or he could be a day 2 pick. Um, I don't know what he's going to be, but South
I
Carolina,
think
yeah,
he's
we'll see what
yeah.
happens.
I think he's going to take on more of the rushing load, obviously with them losing Rocket Sanders.
Yep.
But offensively, with the line and all that, they do have most of those guys coming back. Again,
Right.
it's can people like Nick Harbor, can people like Maceo Bennett, like can those guys ascend to be the weapons that they want them to be? I really don't care who's at running back for South Carolina because I think that person will eat with the returning offensive lineman and having a quarterback like Sellers. I think that person will shouldn't have a problem if they're a decent runner. The question is, like you said, I mean, it's up front with what they lost. I mean, you're losing Kennard and Tonga and all those guys. I mean, that's what made them so. That's what made them beat people up at the end of the year. They were physically beating people up. I did not. I wanted no parts of South Carolina last year because they had a 3-level defense, and now I think you're now asking Sellers to almost, depending on where this defense falls, who knows, right? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns right now. I think there's talent that's coming in. They seem to be recruiting a lot better. They also recruit the DMV very well. There's a lot
Yes.
of kids in the DMV on that team. So I'm not going to count them out defensively, but I do think that they're, because of Dylan Stewart and because of Lenora Sellers, they're getting a ton of hype because they have two of the top
Mm-hmm.
football players in college football, right? So it's like, where's the rest of the squad? What are they going to do? And are some of those other talented pieces, will they ascend? The next game is LSU, a team we both feel good about.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brian Kelly, this is a prove it year. Personally, I've been asking, some of the LSU people out there. You know who you are. Y'all come in the chat every week. Um, Brian Kelly, for me, and this is, I'm just gonna keep it a buck. They need to beat Clemson on the road. I think it's for mental. I think it's a mental thing because they've lost all of their openers with him. Granted, they've all been like that. That they play on that Monday, and they've been at the neutral site. The USC games that have been weird and all that, and they've been electric openers. But you lost openers with Jaden Daniels. You lost opener last year with Garrett Nussbaum. Like, you're getting good quarterback play. It's not like you. It's not like they haven't been getting good quarterback play, and your defense has been just so far below the LSU standard. Now they got back the right direction, getting Coach Baker from Missouri and getting them at least back on track. But you think about the disappointment people like Harold Perkins have been coming off the year he had as a freshman. I do think that this is, Whit Weeks and all these guys. Like, I think this is the time they really put it together because LSU, I think, is going to be able to run the ball with Caden Durham. I think that's the difference this time around than the other years with Brian Kelly. But to me, mentally as a program, that game in Death Valley, and they're going on the road versus a very good Clemson team. To me, to get their minds right for the rest of the season, they need to see the ball go in. They need to win an opening game. They keep starting 0-1. I don't think they can afford to start 0-1 again this season, considering where SEC play falls. SEC play falls. What say you with LSU?
Yeah, LSU. The expectation down there is that they need to make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, Brian Kelly's job could. Well, I don't even know if they can even fire him because they got to pay him because otherwise they have to buy off the contract that they paid him. But listen, there's a lot of huge expectations for them for sure. Their offensive line is their biggest question mark. How do they replace both of their tackles, especially Will Campbell? I think they lost their center too. So you
Yeah, and
gotta
lost Emory Jones, right tackle as well.
Yep, you got to revamp offensive line that you got to try to fix. The receivers are fine. Like their receivers are fine. Anderson, both the Anderson twins, as I call them. You got them. You got Destin Hill. I like him a lot. I like some of the capabilities that he can provide. They got pieces. They got pieces for sure down there. The question about them though is number one is their offensive line. Number two is how like that the defense will be improved. The question is how improved would that defense actually be? Because last year I just thought it was a shit show. Harold Perkins for the time he played, even before he got hurt, they kept playing him out of position because he's a weird player. He's 6'1", 225 pounds with short arms. That when you play him off the edge is a nightmare because of his speed. But the problem is that if a tackle gets his hand on him, it's a wrap because he's not strong. He doesn't really have like a much stronger lower body. And then when they played him they play him as an off ball, and they kind of played him more as a traditional box linebacker.
Yeah, his instincts haven't been where they
Doesn't
should
have
be.
the instinct. He gets caught too many. He gets caught too many times, and again, you get your hands on him, it's over. He does not know how to disengage, which is a problem. In that particular aspect. So, what do they do with him? Do they go back to using him traditionally like they did his freshman year, where they just said, "Screw it, we're just going to play you free, and we're just going to play you a lot on the edge," or are they going to play him as an off-ball linebacker role, but just let him shoot the? If you're going to do that, at least let him shoot the gaps at least. Let him shoot. Let him shoot the A. Let him shoot the A gap. That's what he can specialize in. You got to use him as a pressure blitzer. I don't know how they're going to use him. I mean, Patrick Payton should be that next Braden Swinton. I don't think he's a great edge defender, but in terms of pass rushing technique, oh yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah,
Heck,
he's a beast.
quarterback. He'll be that next Braden Swinton for them last year. Um, but their secondary needs to be it's that secondary's got to get better. It's got to get better. Obviously they added more physicality. There, Meister Delane could be a first round pick who was for Virginia Tech. I think he fits that secondary scheme perfectly. But again, like LSU, as much talent as they have, and I'm very high on that team, they got a lot of question marks too, man. Garrett Musnire, I think. Listen, people are crowning him as a first round pick. I got him as a day 3 guy. I don't see it.
Ooh, that's a hot take.
I don't see it. Yes. Can he anticipate? Yes, he can anticipate. I think he can fit passes through tight windows, but very similar to Carson Beck, he will make some of the dumbest sort of decisions, some of the dumbest mistakes, some of the dumbest throws. He doesn't have great pocket feel. And then mobility is just like it's okay. It's nothing too shabby. And he's a stick. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. Like he's with
Yeah, he's not the most mobile for his size. You would, especially this day and age. Um, I do like the arm.
yep.
I like the arm. I like the pedigree. His father just won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. I like the coaching aspect and the pedigree there. I'm with you though from a standpoint. The production was there last year overall. I mean, he put up big numbers.
Yeah.
He threw for
Yep.
4,000 yards. But bro, you had a top 5 tackle on one side, and you had a second, third round pick at right tackle. Like that LSU offensive line, from a pass blocking perspective, you know, was as good as you can get. But the moment he faced any type of real heat, that's where the real bad decisions came. Like, how will he play if he doesn't have that same, forever and a day to throw? Now, the running game will help too, because that was another
Yeah.
thing that messed them up. But with Nussmeier, my only thing holding, I think he's gonna be a rock star this year. I'm gonna disagree with you on his eval. But to your point, what gets in my head is the second half versus Texas A&M. I can't get that out of my head. Drew said it right there. That second half versus Texas A&M, and I granted the kicking game fell apart too for them, and there was a lot going wrong. But then he just started spiraling really bad. If that's out of his system and that's more of a one-off, I think LSU makes the playoffs. I think they make the playoffs. I think they have probably a top 5 offense, honestly. But we've seen where people can get to him because of the mobility. So we'll see. But people are very, very high on Nuss, right? I mean, he's up there in the Cade Klubnik, Lenora Sellers conversations of best returning quarterbacks in college football, right? So something to look at. Just as we go to OU, right? So speaking of the top guys, there are people that feel that John Mateer will be the best quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah. I'm
He
a
went
fan.
for over 40 touchdowns at Wazoo. He comes with his offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle. We know what Ben Arbuckle did when he had Cam Ward. I think a lot of people feel as though John Mateer is the second coming of Cam Ward, as what Cam Ward brought to Miami in terms of instant, oh my God, offense. They feel that John Mateer, similar skill set, was Cam Ward's backup, balled the hell out last year, 40 plus touchdowns, will bring that same instant offense to Norman. We know how starving they are for offense. BV is another person, in my opinion, who's on the hot seat. This is what for him, year 3 now. 6 and 7 is not going to cut it. No, year 4 for
Year
BV,
4. Yep.
actually.
Yep.
Year four for BV, excuse me. Year 4 for BV, he's definitely on the hot seat because you went 6 and 7 in year 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see OU? Because that actually is a common opponent, obviously, that we both have.
Yeah, Oklahoma can be. They can. I mean, I think they're gonna listen. Oklahoma's a weird team, man, because Oklahoma could be one of the more. They could be one of the most dangerous teams in college in college football. They're in that same realm as Vanderbilt. They're a nuisance to play. Um, a very, Brent Venables is one of the smartest defensive minds in college football. Obviously, they got some really good coaching personnel. Bill Benabal, which finally it caught up with him, man. Because I don't know how he kept doing it in terms of developing these offensive linemen, and they just kept rotating in and out like it was just like you just picking up candy from a shop. And I don't know how he did it. It finally caught up with him. But eventually they'll rebound. He's one of the best line coaches in the country. I'm a huge fan of Mateer. I'm a huge fan of this kid. I watched a lot of him at Washington State. That offensive line was terrible and very similar to Lenore Sellers. Man, he was making a lot of plays, a lot of he's doing a lot of a lot of improv over there, man. And so I would say, but
Wow.
I would say besides Sellers and Childs, he's probably the third most mobile quarterback. I would, or in terms of speed, quickness, and agility, I think in the country, I think he's third. He's a hell of an athlete compared to a lot of the quarterbacks that's going to be coming out. And again, he tends to struggle with certain areas. He's not the most anticipatory quarterback in the world. He's not. For the most part, he's afraid to kind of pull the trigger if those windows are starting to be shorting up a little bit. But his ability to perform off platform throws is nuts. He is accurate as hell outside of the pocket. He has great pocket feel. He has great pocket feel, great pocket mobility. I'm a fan. I like him a lot. And so, do I think he'll be the next Cam Ward in terms of rejuvenating the program and getting them like 11 wins? It's possible. It's definitely possible. Oklahoma's got weapons, man. They got some weapons down there. I like Deion Burks. He's still there. I wish Nick Anderson kind of would have stayed. I actually would have made that receiver room a lot more lethal. But they got some weapons. But questions about how is that offense? I think it'll be better. But the question is how good that offensive line actually will be. Defensively, they'll be fine.
They bring in Jaden Ott too,
Oh, okay.
from Cal to,
Yep.
to to help
That's a,
run the
that's a big
football.
game.
That's a big pickup.
That's a big. Yep. That's a big game for them. So yeah, Brent. Yeah, I mean, the offensive. I mean, obviously Brent Venables. They want to try to establish more of a ground game defensively. They'll be fine. They'll be fine defensively. I just felt like that defense. They got hampered with so many injuries. It was terrible. They were down to the third string at certain points. Their defense will be fine. Mason Thomas. I'm very high on him. Think he has a chance to potentially be a first round pick.
Yeah, our
Um,
Mason Thomas had 9.5 sacks last year.
yep, he really really good player. They'll be fine. Uh, Question though is just how is the offense going to hold up? They also had a lot of bad luck on their side with the injuries, and so Oklahoma's all. But again, Oklahoma's schedule it's tough. It's a tough
Tough
schedule.
schedule. We
Another
will learn a lot from OU week 2, right? Playing again in the Michigan game, especially if their offense is already humming and at scale, or if they need more time getting into conference play. I think we will learn a lot about OU week 2 in that Michigan game.
Mhm.
Just going back, a lot of people having comments about Harold Perkins. Um, I think you have to almost play him in that. Somebody brought up Malik Jefferson for back in the day at Texas. I think you play him in
Yeah.
like that type of role, just a weak side missile. Don't think too much. See ball, hit ball. We're probably going to primarily blitz you on third down, but we'll send you from different angles and levels to just let we want you playing. We want you playing forward and fast, and just being a dog. So I think that's how I see Harold Perkins. The other kid on LSU's defense that's interesting is Toiviano, who started at corner.
Yeah, Jamie.
Javian Toiviano, who's now going to be playing safety
Mm-hmm.
for them. So I need to see how that brother looks, if he's more comfortable at safety. It's kind of funny when he came out, it was always kind of, does he have the ball skills and all those things? Because he was more of a physical kid. So now that he is a safety, how does he look for LSU? And then we know that they brought in 3 guys in the portal in their secondary
Yep.
chance. So we'll have to
Mm-hmm.
see how those guys, obviously the Virginia Tech kid that you talked about earlier, but the rest of them, how they, form that depth together. The last one I want to touch on before I sign off with you, because it's been great just talking ball with you again and going through this. So again, y'all make sure y'all show Jan some love and follow his channel, Jan Sports. Auburn,
Yeah.
Hugh Freeze, Jackson Arnold. We just talked about OU. Jackson Arnold is now part of the Auburn Tigers. Auburn has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball.
Mhm.
What do you expect Hugh Freeze to do with said talent?
They'll be better. Auburn will be a better team, whether if it's by one win or by a couple wins or more. The Auburn will be a better team than what they were last year. They were a very very young unit, off both offensively and defensively. Um, they got some big time players. Obviously, they got some big. Obviously, Cam Coleman's one of the better receivers in the country. You picked up Eric Singleton from the portal was a big
We
game.
wanted him bad.
Yeah,
We wanted
he would have been
Singleton.
a perfect fit for
Mhm.
Texas. Perfect fit for Texas in terms of being a yak specialist, and oh, he would have been a perfect fit.
He was awesome at
Mhm.
Georgia Tech. Mm.
Yep. And so they were able to kind of grab him up. Their offensive line is really underrated. That's led by Connor Liu, who I think could potentially end up being a first. The center class is actually like that. We might be looking at one of the greatest center classes of all time, but that's just for a different story, another different day. I'm a big fan of Connor Liu, man. In terms of Auburn, one of the best centers in the SEC for sure. Defensively, Keldrick Faulk. We all know. I mean, Keldrick Faulk's a first round talent. First round
Yes,
talent. Six
agree.
hits, 280 pounds that literally can play as a 5 tech or can play potentially as a wide 9 or well again as a 7, which is nuts. They got a lot of talent, man, on both sides of the ball. And listen, this is all going to be on Jackson Arnold. It's all going to be on Jackson Arnold and Hugh Freeze. I do have some questions about the running game. They did lose. They did lose a dog there. So
Yeah, Jarquez Hunter's a big
Hunter's
loss.
a dog. Hunter's a dog. So I got some questions about the depth at running game and the running game, but their offensive line should be a lot better. Their defense, pretty underrated, sneaky part of their team. Yes, they gave up a lot of points. I understand it, but the talent is there to a point where that point differential could be dropped way below. But it's all going to be on Jackson Arnold, man, because he brings something which frustrates a lot of SC teams, including my team, which is his mobility. His mobility, and he has a cannon for an arm, like these Auburn fans. They keep posting clips of the spring game about freaking, about him delivering, just dropping dimes. I'm like, okay, well, it's, whatever. It's a practice rep, but whatever, you do you. But no, Jackson Arnold, man, listen, he's a hell of a talent. I think he's way better than Payton Thorne. I think Payton Thorne offered that mobility, but just wasn't really there in terms of arm consistency. I think Jackson Arnold offers that from a physical standpoint. But he's got to put it all together. If they do, Auburn could be a top 15 team in the country. If they don't, Auburn's going to be in the exact same situation, but they'll be a nuisance. They'll be a nuisance for somebody because it's too much talent down there for them to simply just struggle against some of these to every top team they play against. So I like
Auburn Auburn was the best bad team I saw play football
yeah,
last year.
a lot of close
By
games, man.
by far. They were the best bad team. Like they it did not make sense when you watch them on. I'll put it this way. If you look at pro football, and everybody feels differently about Pro Football Focus, but like after games, they had people grading out so high at so many different positions on both sides of the ball. And then you look back and you be like, they lost that game. How'd they lose? And it was always something silly. Even Peyton Thorne, there'd be games where Peyton Thorne played pretty good, but they had 4 fumbles
Mm-hmm.
from like randomly. Or, the kicker missed a 27-yard field goal. Like I just could not understand because that's why I was like, hey, that A&M game, I was trying to tell A&M fans, this is not an easy game before y'all play us because Auburn they have been playing well, they're just not winning games, but they're playing well, if that makes sense. And so I just see, yeah, like you said, it's going to come down to Jackson Arnold. I mean, last year, Peyton Thorne couldn't elevate them to where they were winning those close games. Can Jackson Arnold just have a full makeover, full reset, and use this kind of like Haynes King at Georgia Tech? I feel like now, granted, different type of quarterback, different situation, different type of player. But if he can, that to me would be my goal if I'm Auburn, is to have that same type of production from a fallen star recruit that people thought couldn't play. Is Georgia Tech turn Haynes King into something, right? Can Auburn turn Jackson Arnold into something? I had this comment highlighted here because it was said earlier, but he beat us to it. They also need to win their opener
Yeah.
because to my point about bad team, those losses get mental. trust me, I know this is a Texas fan. I watched us for too many years in that 2010s, early 2000s, 2020 period where we'd be right there with somebody, right there, right there, right there. We played well on paper, but we didn't win. The outcome wasn't what we wanted. They have to be outcome based now because there's too much damn talent on this team to be winning, to be not even making bowls. Are you kidding me? There's too much talent on this team. There's going to be multiple people drafted from this defense, Jance. Falk is will right now. I'm with you on that first round hype, but there's other people on this roster who I know are good football players. I
Mm-hmm.
saw it. So it's just like, can you put it? Can they turn into wins? Their schedule's very interesting. They go to Baylor on Friday, August 29th. That's a big game. That's going to tell us a lot. That's a big game because after that, they play two tune-up games and then they go to OU for the Jackson Arnold game. If they're 3-0 going into that OU game, all bets are off to me. If they're 3-0 going into that game. But obviously we know how they always play Bama regardless of record. That is a big rivalry game, so
Yeah,
anything can
you can
happen.
throw a record out the wall. You can just throw it out the window. That game comes, it's I don't know. I can't describe it. Can't even describe it. It's Voodoo land.
Man, it was good chopping it up with you. Any parting thoughts or final comments? Where do you think Alabama ultimately ends up? I know you said Texas will make the SEC championship game. Where do you think right now? Right, I mean it's early. I ain't gonna nobody gonna hold you to something you said in May. But where do you think Alabama will end up? Even if they don't make the SEC championship game, I mean we should have what 4 or 5 teams making the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So where do you have them ending up at the end of the regular season? I should say.
Yeah, I got us making the playoffs. I got Texas and Georgia for now, and for the rematch. Well, for a trilogy in the SEC championship game. I think Georgia's schedule is a little bit. It's not as tough. Ole Miss is just no. I think Ole Miss.
Not buying Austin Simmons.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing with that Ole Miss team again, replacing 30 starters again. Like we're not doing that. We can throw them out. So Georgia, they'll be fine. Like I think we'll beat them, but Georgia ultimately at the end of the day, I think their schedule does favor them a little bit. They'll get back to the SEC championship game. I think for us, um, I think we might go 9-3 again. Honestly, like for now, I'm leaning. We might go 9-3 again, potentially. I think our schedule gets a little bit tougher towards the end. I think Oklahoma. Oklahoma will be better. That will be a better team. LSU could potentially get that job done. For some reason, they play better in Tuscaloosa than they do at home against us. Doesn't make any sense, but that's just the way it is. And like you said before, Auburn is a much more. They're a better team. I think there will be a better team. So that those could be the 3 losses right there. But that can still get us into the playoffs because I don't think we're going to get blown out, which ultimately cost us a playoff berth. But so I'm seeing 9-3 and 10-2, which normally my expectations is like 10-2 and lower, like 10, 11 games. I'm gonna lower my expectations despite the amount of talent and returning depth we have. It's possible that 9-3 and 10-2 is definitely on the table. That's what I'm leaning towards for now. But I think we go ahead and make the playoffs. But I just want to get there. I don't even care about the SEC championship. I don't care about the first. I just want to get to the playoffs and let's just see what happens from there.
I think your defense is too good to
Yeah.
to not make it unless there's just some sort of fallout that happens with the injury bug or something crazy like that. I just think that I think there's going to be some teams again. You guys play Sheehan, Kyler Murray the first game. I think you're going to smother those guys.
Yep.
I think Mizzou, teams like that. I think teams like Tennessee that just don't have. I think the only people that will, OU, LSU, people that have real firepower,
Yep.
where okay, Ty Simpson, okay, Jam Miller, okay, Ryan Williams, we need to score, right? Like a lot. I only see a few games on your schedule where they're really going to be asked to really generate volume of points. I think your defense is going to be outstanding next year with the talent. So we'll see how things end up. Jance, where can the people find you, sir?
You can find me at Jant Sports on YouTube, Jant716 if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, same situation as Jant716 there. But yep, Jant Sports on YouTube if you're looking for rants, like I normally like to do for mines, just in case, and just some other breaking college football stuff. Find me at Jan Sports.
Perfect, man. Well, we'll have you back, probably again before the season starts because there's just so much to talk about and track, especially as we know more as our teams go through summer camp and, we get kind of gear up for the start of the season that last week of August. So appreciate you coming on. D Money Can't Get Money. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Keep doing your things. Even thanks for the bringing on a great guest. Shout out to Jance.
Appreciate it.
And
Appreciate it.
shout out to the chat for the knowledge. No, this chat is awesome, man, because we're going through each opponent with Jance as he's talking through it, and y'all are adding little tidbits about each team, right? It just speaks to the ball knowledge on this channel with the folks that we have contributing in. It helps me do my job. It helps all of us, right? So fun chat. We will be back on Friday. Friday, we're going to rank all the quarterbacks that Texas plays. So be ready for the Friday episode to have your list. Look at the 12 the 11 teams we're playing, and the 12 teams we're playing or whatever, and rank each of the quarterbacks top to bottom, and we'll talk about it on Friday. Jance, appreciate you again. Guys, subscribe, like the whole bit. We're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers by August 30th. Remember, horns always up. Hook 'em. Appreciate you.